Alright, what's up guys? Today I'm going to make a quick little video before you start your assignment. Now this video is just going to be a review of what we already learned in 6.3. So 6.3, lesson 6.3 talked about graphing transformations. And what we're going to make is a little cheat sheet. So I'm going to call this transformations cheat sheet. And transformations, remember, we talked about how if we have a function, we could see that function being changed. So the two functions that we talk about are the square root. So I'm just going to write square root right here and cube root. Now these square root and cube root functions have distinct shapes. So the square root, for example, is going to look something like this, where it comes from the origin and then goes out to the right. This is going to have an equation square root x. Now for the cube root, it is going to look pretty different. So it does come out from the origin as well. It's slightly flatter, but it comes out from the other side just the same. So this is a cube root, and there's a 3 here at the top of the radical. And then we have an x inside. So the difference is that the square root doesn't have any number. What does, it's a 2 right here, but it's an invisible 2, so you don't need to write it. And the cube root has a 3 on the outside. And now that we have this, we want to define how exactly we are going to transform this function. And we've talked about this quite a few times before, but we're going to see exactly how that looks like with these general equations. So for example, we could have y. And just remember, y could also be written as f of x in case you ever forget. And then we're going to have a plus or minus a. Then we have a square root. We have an x minus h. Let me write that square root a bit smaller. This is a plus k. So for the cube root, it's going to look very, very similar. The only difference is we need to incorporate that little 3 at the top. So if we don't do that 3, then it's not a cube root equation. So it's x minus h, and then we got plus k. So with these equations, we're just going to break down each little variable inside to see what happens. And the first thing we're going to start with is this h inside. So that h is for horizontal shifts. So we have two scenarios. If h is a negative value, that means it's going to shift to the right. So this is the one that's opposite. If we see a number on the inside and it's negative, we know that it's going to shift to the right. And if it's positive, we know that it's going to shift to the left. So pretty simple to remember. Remember, it has to be on the inside. So it's that minus h, and it's this one over here also. It's inside the radical. The next one we're going to look at is the plus k on the outside. So we got plus k's on the very outside. So k, if we have a k on the outside, and if it's negative, this one does not switch. It's going to be vertical movement, so it's going to shift down. This one is just normal. If we have a positive k on the outside, and that is going to shift up. So pretty simple. Last thing, we have that a in the front with that plus or minus. So first of all, we're going to talk about what happens if a is a big number. And when I mention a, I just mean the number in the front. I don't care if it's positive or negative. All I'm talking about is the number. And the way that I'm going to denote that is with two vertical lines that refer to a as the absolute value. So for example, the absolute value of a is what I'm going to reference. And if that is bigger than 1, then that means it's going to vertically stretch. If you're not sure what absolute value of a means, then I'm just going to write this super quick example. Let's say we have 5 absolute value. Well, the number we're talking about is 5. If we have negative 5, well, then we're still talking about the number 5. We did a whole unit on absolute values. Okay, so if it's bigger than 1, if it's a big number, it's going to vertically stretch. If a is in between 0 and 1, or basically, in other words, it's a fraction, then it's going to vertically shrink, which makes sense. If we make things into a fraction, vertically shrink or compress, it's the same thing. If we make things into a fraction of itself, then it's going to be smaller, obviously. And last thing, if it's negative, then we're going to see a flip or a reflection. So it reflects across the x-axis. That is what you'll see if a is negative. So these are the main things that you guys need to understand about transformations, that there's 2 different functions, square roots, which are shown on the top left, and the cube roots, which are shown on the other side. And then that could have transformations based on the numbers or variables that are in the equation. And then that's going to produce different things depending on all these things we just wrote. So hopefully this will help you with the assignment. And if any questions,